Pre-order the official Fact Hunt book from Unbound.com today! No, seriously. The other day, I was thinking about 2018's Fallout 76 pre-order scandal, where Bethesda lied by not only substituting a canvas duffel bag with a cheaper nylon replacement, but also substituting a really good game for a shit one. I thought to myself, is this the only time we've ever been lied to when pre-ordering a game? Then immediately came to the realisation, of course not, Larry, you bloody idiot. This is the video game industry we're talking about here. So, tracking down more of these scandalous events, this episode I look at these repulsive reservations, these problematic provisionals, and these declivities defamants, as I say. But, hello you, I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to Fact Hunt. 6 times you were scammed pre-ordering games. EA's seminal "Why Does Some Sod Always Get the Tank Before Me" simulator, Battlefield 3, was pretty much a soft reboot of the franchise. And while it was technically closer to the Bad Company spin-off series than the original, it did spark a new light into their ailing franchise. However, that didn't stop EA from talking out their bumholes when trying to lure PS3 owners into pre-ordering. Seeing Battlefield 3's massive potential, Sony struck a deal with EA to entice gamers to buy the game for their system, with their main draw being anyone who pre-ordered the PlayStation version would also receive a copy of Battlefield 1943 on the disc too, an online-only, heavily consolised sequel to the original World War II Battlefields, which was actually a pretty decent offer, as 1943 was a great game. Only thing was, come launch day, it was totally missing from the disc. Where was our free game you promised? Gamers shouted angrily at the House of Hawkins. So in age-old fashion, they took to Twitter and Reddit to complain to EA about this atrocity en masse. So, did EA make good on their initial promise and sent everyone a download code for the missing game? You're having a laugh, ain't you? No, their compromise was, out of the goodness of their own hearts, they would allow you to buy the DLC for the game a whopping 7 days early. Which is something you could actually do already. Of course, this most generous offer wasn't good enough for those selfish, entitled gamers who ended up filing a class action lawsuit against EA for misleading consumers. This ultimately resulted in not EA finally giving codes to those affected, as you might think, but just making the entire game free on PSN, so anyone could now nab it, whether they had bought Battlefield 3 or not. Still, a slap in the face for people who actually did pre-order the game. But it did teach EA a valuable lesson, and they never did anything shitty ever again. For about 3 days. Now, if you thought FPS scamming was exclusive to EA, even Battlefield's arch-nemesis, Call of Duty, is just as guilty of defrauding its fanbase. Even if conning gullible 12-year-olds is like shooting fish in a barrel.
You little motherfucker!
I am
little penis bitch!
Case in point, to entice the kiddies into pre-ordering Black Ops 2, Activision offered a code to play the much-loved Nuketown map ahead of its official DLC release.
Pre-order now and get the Nuketown 2025 bonus map and access to the double XP launch weekend.
Thing is, that wasn't entirely true. What Activision accidentally left out was the Blops code only allowed you to play the map for 48 hours during its double XP launch weekend. So not only was the code in fact only a trial to play the map, forcing you to buy the DLC pack if you wanted to play it further, but anyone who pre-ordered a game and didn't immediately enter the code couldn't play the map at all. This issue got so heated that even the BBC addressed it in their consumer show Watchdog, when unemployed benefit chavs started writing in, upset that their electric babysitting box was denying them playtime.
I think it's completely unfair that such a large international company can treat members of the public like this, who've gone out and spent a lot of hard-earned money on a promise that was taken away from them.
Needless to say, Activision did recant their blatant bout of misleading advertising and let everyone who had entered a code get their precious map back, albeit as a random non-selectable map, and only to those who had entered the code before the opening weekend. Black Ops 2 went on to become the third biggest selling title in the entire franchise. So, CODing fans proved highly successful for Bobby Kotick. God bless his rat-faced, shit-eating grin. Who here remembers Putty Squad? No? Well, me neither, to be honest, but it's an extremely early PS4 release, to the point it was actually the very first third-party title released outside of the console's launch window. But despite it being heavily promoted as a holy grail of long-lost Amiga games finally being made public, it only really sold on the merits that there was bugger all else to play on the PS4 at the time, before being demoted to spend the rest of eternity at the bottom of bargain bins along with copies of Knack and that crappy Killzone sequel. However, Putty Squad's poor sales could also be attributed to the sheer amount of bewildering promises the game's owner, Mark Cale, spewed out to lure gullible plebs into pre-ordering a fully priced 20-year-old Amiga game. Now, Putty Squad has a rather volatile history with pre-orders to begin with. Despite being completed and reviewed in magazines way back in 1993, it's never made it to stores. 4 years later, a German company by the name of Alive Mediasoft started taking pre-orders for the game from all three people on the planet who still gave a toss about the Amiga in 1997. They took payments, constantly broke deadlines and promises, then buggered off into the sunset with everyone's money. And to top it all off, Alive Mediasoft never even had the rights to sell the game in the first place. Fast forward 20 years to 2013, and Mark Cale announces an HD remake would finally be released on multiple systems. In an interview with Retro Gamer magazine, he announced to them that he was also going to release a special collector's edition that would even come with the unreleased Amiga original on floppy disk. A month later, Mark gave an interview to Eurogamer, additionally proclaiming that anyone who pre-orders the PS4 version would also receive a free season pass. Not only that, but people who unlock stickers in the game would also receive DLC maps released fortnightly, totally for free, for an entire year. Exciting stuff, eh? And guess what? None of that ever happened. Even Mark's claim that Putty Squad was unreleased is complete humbug. A Super Nintendo port was brought out the same time the Amiga original was supposed to. It's funny how you forget simple facts when you're hyping something. But all of a sudden before release, Cale redacts the special collector's edition, claiming he couldn't find enough floppy disks or a reproduction facility to copy the game for it. As everybody knows, it's completely impossible to copy an Amiga ROM to a floppy disk yourself using a PC or an Amiga. No, it isn't. So anyone who pre-ordered Putty Squad never got their Amiga disc, nor their year's worth of free DLC season pass. Soon after, Mark Cale went suspiciously quiet. In fact, he hasn't really said anything public about the franchise until the announcement of Super Putty Squad for the Nintendo Switch in 2017, which he slapped the word Super on to possibly fool people into thinking it was a completely different game. No, it isn't. In all fairness, Mark Cale wasn't really scamming people here. He just had a terminal case of Peter Molyneux syndrome, with his mouth writing checks his bottom couldn't cash. But at least he was decent enough to give away a digital copy of the Amiga original for free on his website. So, good on you there, Mark. A double whammy this time, folks, as I'm including 2 games in this section, mainly as they're the same reason, but they're both equally as stupid nonetheless. Now, bundling a beta code or a demo for an upcoming, highly anticipated title has always been a surefire way to entice players to buy a game that the publisher doesn't hold in full confidence. I mean, did anyone actually buy Zone of the Enders on a PS2 for the flying, fighting robots and not to play the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo? No. The answer is no. EA noticed this back in 2014 when they published Bulletstorm for the Xbox 360. They joined up with Microsoft and bundled the beta of Gears of War 3 with a £10 more Epic Edition, which contained absolutely nothing else. So, for the low price of just £10 British more, you got to pay a publisher to test their own video game. What an honour! But if you think Bulletstorm spending £10 more to play a beta was bad enough, Bethesda's enticed people to buy Wolfenstein The New Order, just the regular edition this time thankfully, by bundling a code to play the beta of Doom 4. What's that? You've never heard of Doom 4? Well, of course not. Bethesda went and gone and cancelled it, didn't they? So no one ever got to redeem their beta code. Bethesda would release a new Doom 2 years later in the guise of Doom. Well, Doom 2016 if you want to be pedantic. But that beta was readily available to everyone, whether they had previously bought Wolfie or not. Thankfully, Bethesda learned from their pre-order scam mistake by turning it into an art form. Our final tale this episode is a story of screwing pre-orderers over, though not through corruption this time, but of sheer incompetence. Now, everyone knows Amazon. You know, that site owned by the richest man in the world. You know, the one where you have to pay them for your loyalty with Amazon Prime. Well, guess what? They're also bloody useless at pre-orders. Back in 2016, the publisher Axis Games were about to release Zero Time Dilemma for the PS4 and PS Vita, the third title in their Zero Escape series. It's a rather niche franchise in the West, so to entice pre-orders, they offered a free replica of the game's infamous watch. This ended up being highly successful, as the pre-orders sold out within hours. Come the June of that year, Zero Time Dilemma was released, but alas, the watches were a no-show. In fact, some people didn't even get the game either for another month. Access did inform their customers that there was going to be a supply issue in the days coming up to release, but those days turned into weeks, then into months. This sounds like a pretty standard delayed gift story at the moment, doesn't it? You know, nothing new here. But out of the blue, Amazon announced to everyone who pre-ordered the game they would now need to re-buy the watch from them. In their defence, Amazon did issue everyone a voucher to repurchase the watch, but some bozo at the company decided a cheap rubber timepiece that came with a $50 game was now worth $500. An inflated price on a free voucher is fine if you happen to live in the US, but anyone outside of America who pre-ordered a game faced hefty import tax and shipping fees thanks to Amazon's falsely inflated value, ranging into hundreds of dollars for some countries. It gets worse. If getting slapped in the face with astronomical tax and shipping fees wasn't bad enough, the tiny few who did receive their watches months later were horrified to discover them completely smashed, thanks to the watches being so cheaply made and poorly packaged. By this time, Amazon just gave up sending out the watches and just gave everyone a $10 discount voucher off their next order instead. And this is where the story ultimately goes completely out of the window. You might be wondering, whatever happened to those watches? Were they lost in shipping? Were they returned because of quality issues? Were they even made at all? The answer is, Amazon had them all along. However, rather than ship them out to all their pre-orderers, they shipped them all out to one person. You literally couldn't make this up. Hello you. Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. click on the bell if you already are to make sure you're notified, and be sure to check out my other episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon. But thanks again for watching, and I'll be seeing you next time. Ta-ra for now.